What a day, and we haven't even started yet. Thursday, June 22nd, 2023, the NBA Draft tonight here on the Team 980. And on a day that we knew the Wizards franchise would change forever based off who they take, presumably with that 8th selection tonight, we'll ultimately see if they keep it. They've acquired the best player they're going to acquire today, and that is Jordan Poole. If you're just tuning in, incredible how quickly these things have happened. Michael Winger and Will Dawkins have been on the job for, 2 weeks now? 3 weeks maybe? And here we are. They have traded Bradley Beal to Phoenix. That deal is all but done. In return, they get Chris Paul. They then flip Paul to Golden State, which is something we should talk about later in the show, what that means on the Warriors side of things. Chris Paul's probably going to come off the bench for them. That's wild. I hadn't even thought about that until right now. But for the Wizards side of it, they get a 24-year-old who averaged over 20 points a game last year, has 4 years remaining on his contract, and is one of the biggest enigmas in the entire NBA. And he might be gone in another year. And what I like about this deal is this is a great example to finally answer the question that everyone has been asking, which is, what's the plan? What do you mean when you say, like, oh, you don't know what is actually going to happen? They're doing a good job, but I don't know how it gets better. Which has kind of been my response the last couple of days as they flipped Beal, as they flipped Porzingis, which we didn't have a chance to talk about. When we left the show yesterday, they were trading Kristaps Porzingis in a 3-team deal with the Clippers. We did a whole segment with Danny Rouillet on it. He called in and everything. And then it didn't happen because that's the NBA. And last night, just before midnight, they get the deal done with Marcus Smart going to Memphis and Tyus Jones coming here to D.C. And then lo and behold, today you get the much bigger swing. But what I said through all of those trades, the Porzingis trade, the Beal trade, is this is about clearing the decks. And don't really worry too much about what you're getting in return. On the Beal side of it, there was nothing, like they got everything they could from Phoenix. People want them to invent something to get back from Phoenix. And sure, if they had more time and, whatever, could they have maybe swung some kind of magical 3-team deal? But probably not. There just aren't a lot of teams that have the kind of asset that I think a lot of fans want them to get. It's like they want a top 5 pick in return. And, teams aren't giving that up for a guy who's going to cost $208 million over the next 4 years, who averaged 23 points a game last year. That's not happening. So the idea that they could get anything more from Phoenix, who, by the way, gave them more than they had to me, Winger and Dawkins smashed that deal. Smashed it. Because if I was Phoenix, I would have told them to screw off. If I was the Phoenix Suns, I would have said, you get Chris Paul, and you get, who else came in that deal with the salary filler? Whoever else was in that
Landry
deal.
Shamet.
Oh, yeah, Landry Shamet. Thank you, Anthony. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Anthony Haney back. Welcome back, sir. Landry Shamet and Chris Paul, you get them, and our picks are our picks. Bradley wants to be here. It's a no-trade clause. You can't trade him anywhere else. Sucks to be you. And instead, they got every single second-round pick that Phoenix had left after they gave all the rest of them away to the Nets. They got every single pick swap. And I know that the first two were probably in name only. But they got them. What happens if Durant, gets bored and retires, Booker and Beal get hurt, and the Suns suck next year? Weirder things have happened in the history of the NBA. Well, the Wizards would get the Suns pick, or 2 years from now, whatever it is. I think the pick swap is next year. I think it's 24 and 26 and on down the road. But Kevin Durant's 35 years old. Beal's about to be 30. Booker's awesome, but what happens if those two stink and he wants out? You just never know, so you get the pick swap just in case. Okay, the Wizards did that. They couldn't have done more. Porzingis, he's expensive. He's got a not great injury history, although he did have his best and healthiest season last year. And he's only got 1 year remaining. The sweet spot is exactly what the Celtics gave up in Marcus Smart, which is why they get the most in return. He was an affordable player who's really good in his prime and has 2 or 3 years, I think one of them's an option year, remaining on his contract. But you're not going to get a bunch of first-round picks for a guy that's a rental. That's not how this works. And so what the Wizards did was ultimately clear the decks to do exactly the kind of thing that they did today. Exactly the kind of thing they did, which is say, hey, Golden State, you made a mistake on Jordan Poole. He's not the guy that you thought he was. You gave him a contract that he probably shouldn't have gotten. He's still good, but he's overpaid, and you don't want him because there was some bad stuff that happened in your locker room last year around him, which ultimately really started before the season when Draymond punched him in the face. And then he was terrible in the playoffs. A year after, by the way, he was awesome in the playoffs. Helped them win a title. But they were ready to move on. They needed to. So for the price of allowing Golden State to move on, and by the way, moving on to Chris Paul, who will be in a pretty remarkable role for them, exactly what he should be at this stage of his career, you say, we will take draft picks later. And we actually, I have, if you're watching on YouTube, I actually off because there was a report that the Wizards might get the 19th pick tonight. They are not getting that. But let's see. Is it? Yeah, well, I'm going to throw it up, and I'm going to say well after Chris Paul retires. And so could the Warriors be bad? Absolutely. Do you want their 2025 first-round pick? Probably not, because Steph doesn't look like he's slowing down anytime soon. It's far enough in the future that they'll probably, they could be in a rebuild mode, and you have their pick. And that's the kind of long-term thinking that you're looking at for the Washington Wizards right now. People are far too focused on getting assets that will help turn this around quickly. That's not going to work. There's no infrastructure here. There's no nothing here. Every single piece on this roster that's worth something is up for someone else to come get. Because the Wizards are not trying to win in 2023. Not that they are trying to lose. It's that they should not, and I think properly, based off their actions, do not care about winning in 2023. It is about how do we build a generational, multi-year, decade-long contention type of team, which is a 3 to 5 to, frankly, 7-year project to even get started. The one way in which that changes is you get lucky in the lottery or otherwise lucky in the draft, and you hit on someone who is a generational talent. If you hit on that generational talent, that expedites the process. If you don't, you just keep accumulating talent, selling high on it, and going until you get it. Which brings me back to a phrase I've used a lot, and one that I will continue to use, and one that I need to actually directly and poignantly ask Michael Winger and or Will Dawkins about when next time I get the chance, which the Wizards need to enter, and looks like they have, a relentless pursuit of a generational superstar. Until you have a top 5 type of player in the league, you are not done building. And even then, you have to then surround them. It just depends on the order in which you have the pieces. But if you have the ancillary pieces and you don't have that player, you're not winning a title. And I care about that. I care about winning a title. That's what the front office should care about. That's what the coaching staff should win about, because it's sports. And if you don't care about winning a title, if you're just happy to make the playoffs and get waxed in the first round, why are you here? What's the point? Sure, for business purposes, you make a little bit more money every year. But at the end of the day, don't you want to win? And winning means that. That doesn't mean if you don't win a championship, every season is a failure. There are steps along the way. Someone like Nikola Jokic was very vocal about that, and I appreciate his perspective. But at the end of the day, the point is to win a title. And the Wizards are so far from that. And they had to, quote-unquote, go backwards to go forwards. That if you're worried that they didn't get a first-round pick for this or whatever for that, you're kind of focused on the wrong stuff. And what a move like the Poole move does is move the needle in the right direction, because they do get a future asset. And they also show you the path forward. take another team's mistake, have the infrastructure in place to rehab that guy so that, say, Jordan Poole can go average 25 points a game this year, and then you trade him again next offseason. It's what the Warriors did with D'Angelo Russell. And they got some good pieces back for that. Mainly, they got Andrew Wiggins, who helped win them a championship. It's about making sure you manage the assets properly, which does ultimately mean getting those first-round picks, getting the right players around. But with the boxes the Wizards were put in by previous administration doled out contracts, they have done a really good job so far. Being mad that they couldn't get more means you're mad at the situation, not you're mad at Dawkins or Winger or whoever else is pulling the strings on these trades. It's just how markets work. And if you're mad at markets, like, welcome to America, welcome to capitalism. That's how it works. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Now, with all that said about, hey, could they flip Poole in a year? Could they do this? How good is Jordan Poole? I think you'll be surprised when you compare him to the guy who took the most shots here last year. Actually, he didn't. I think Kyle Kuzma took more. But I want to compare Poole and Beal next, because if you just look at it as a trade for those two, I might tell you the Wizards won the trade. I'll explain next here on the Team 980. Naki and Linnell coming up at 6:30 tonight. I'll join them for the first half hour. They go, well, I guess it's not solo because there's two of them, but you get the point. Starting at 7. Craig Hoffman with you, as usual, the Hoffman Show. 47 here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We do have the stream up as well, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. And actually, if you're watching on the stream right now, I'm about to put up a graphic that is going to compare really the crux of the trade that was made. It's not direct. The Wizards trade Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. They get Chris Paul back. Paul goes to Golden State. But if you think of it as a giant 3-team deal where Chris Paul somehow winds up in Golden State, what the Wizards really did, they're in, they're out, is they send out Bradley Beal, they get in Jordan Poole, so they kind of traded one for the other. There's obviously other stuff around that, draft picks, etc. But I'm going to put up the graphic now. ever existed is when the contract stuff doesn't load. Bradley Beal contract. Where is the SPO track? He's going to be close to 54, which is really what I'm looking for. Is he exactly half, or is he just less than half? Beal next year will be 46. So he's 54 in 25, 26. So he's not quite half the cost Poole is, but he's really close to half the cost. And so when you put it in context that way, the Wizards created $20+ million in cap space for a player who's 6 years younger and almost identical production and doesn't have a no-trade clause. And they got a future first-round pick out of it. Actually, they got multiple future picks because you got all of the pick swaps from Phoenix, all of the second-rounders from Phoenix, future first from Golden State, and I think a future second from Golden State. So really, the trade for Washington, at its core, is Beal for Poole, 7 seconds, 4 pick swaps, and a future first. They also give up Jordan Goodwin and Isaiah Todd. I like Goodwin. And he might help Phoenix next year. I'm not trying to disparage Jordan Goodwin at all, who has earned his right to be a full-time NBA player after starting last year as a two-way guy. But that's not a bad deal, considering Bradley Beal had a no-trade clause. And so, is it going to be straightforward and simple to understand always? No. But these are multi-step processes that ultimately what we'll probably wind up doing, Anthony, is a year from now, we will wind up looking back at this deal
This is the best thing, for the franchise moving forward. And selling high is what we must do. And Jordan Poole, I'm expecting him to come in, put up some numbers. He's gonna be given the ball. He's gonna have to go out there, produce, and hopefully the NBA trade deadline, or maybe like you said, next summer we'll end up selling him for a good return.
Right. There's two options to me with Jordan Poole. I mean, I guess there's three, right? One is that he stinks and it goes sideways, and you're like, oh, crap, we're stuck with Jordan Poole for another 3 years at, not outrageous money, but not great money. And maybe, you convince someone to take him because, he just got back in a winning atmosphere, it'd be better or whatever. I don't know. You make that argument, but I think he's going to come in. He's going to have a lot. Like, someone's got to shoot here.
Yep.
Right? Someone's got to take the shots. And there is no better candidate on this roster right now than Jordan Poole. And we're like, look, I don't think this team's going to be very good next year, but the group they've got is kind of fun. Poole's fun.
I like Tyus.
Tyus is fun. Like, he's super competitive and gritty, and, like, that's always fun to watch. Kispert's going to get to shoot a bunch. I'm pumped about that. Like, let's see what Johnny Davis is. They're small as hell.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell their big guys are going to be. Gafford. But, like, okay, fine. I don't care if they win this year. I care about, can they create maximum value for their guys in a way that eventually gets them the kind of assets they need to make the trade for the piece, right? Because what I say, relentless pursuit of a generational superstar.
Yep.
And hey, if they're really bad, maybe they win the lottery next year and there's someone in that draft. There doesn't appear to be right now, but you never know how someone's 1 year in high school or 1 year in college or their G League elite or overtime elite or G League stint goes. Maybe they're the next guy. Maybe they get someone at 8 this year that turns out to be awesome. Like, who knows? But at the end of the day, like, all you can do is maximize value, sell high until you hit on the thing where the value is more interesting if you keep the player than it is to send them out. And I think in acquiring Jordan Poole, they kind of bought low. Like, imagine last year the Warriors saying, we're willing to trade Jordan Poole. It wasn't even a thought. There's no way. Like, he's the future. He's going to take Steph's throne when Steph steps down.
Yep.
Well, then Steph turned out to still be incredible and had one of his best seasons of his career, which is saying something. He's a multiple-time MVP. And Jordan Poole had a bad season. Do I think Jordan Poole's fundamentally broken forever? No. I think he'll be fine. I think getting out of Golden State is probably good for him. I do think that getting to a place like I will say this. Actually, I'll save this for next. Jordan Poole is going to be the test for Will Dawkins and Michael Winger. I'll explain why next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Hope you are having a great Thursday. We are certainly having a chaotic one following all the Wizards trade news. Also, for those watching on the YouTube stream, apologies. We had some audio issues, but we have cleared those up. Whoops, my bad. I did a thing. I don't need to explain it all, but we have fixed it, so that's obviously good. Okay, so I said before the break that the Jordan Poole trade is going to test the Wizards' new front office in a major way. And what I mean by that is Jordan Poole is phenomenally talented, but he is also someone who obviously needs a bit of an image rehab. He's someone who ultimately kind of is a persona non grata in Golden State, which is widely seen as one of the best cultures in the league. But Golden State has taken in players like that before, whether it and on different levels of, I don't want to call them issues, but like difficulty, right? D'Angelo Russell has not always been the easiest guy to implement into a place. Andrew Wiggins has not always been, like he came into Golden State and I think accepted his role in a way that is not easy for someone who had his hype, had his was seen as the next LeBron, Canadian LeBron, and like all the stuff that was about him coming out. They've had different guys over the years come through there. JaVale McGee, kind of a lost soul. Obviously, don't need to tell Wizards fans that. And goes to Golden State and just is an essential part of them winning. I mean, Boogie Cousins comes in there and accepts a much smaller role and helps them get to the finals, even though they ultimately lose that to Toronto, in part because Cousins is hurt for much of that year. But, like, no issues in terms of anything. Poole is one of the few guys that they've actually had issues with there. Draymond obviously took it quite literally into his own hands last preseason, and that was an issue for the entire year for them. Now, Will Dawkins and, to an extent, Michael Winger come from that Oklahoma City tree, that Oklahoma City place, for Dawkins more directly. It's the only place he's ever been, where they take in people and are able to ingratiate them into the culture and build a culture that is extremely professional and I think is well suited for someone like Poole who needs to be loved a little bit. Like, I mean, I don't know everything that happened in Golden State, obviously. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that probably will come out in a book in the future. Bonta Hill, who is our buddy at 95.7 The Game out there, is going to join us a little bit later in the show, and we can ask him about that. But what we know is things here have been a little loose at times. And part of the reason that Ted Leonsis goes and gets Michael Winger, and part of the reason Winger goes and gets Will Dawkins, is because they have experience building the kind of culture that can take a guy like Jordan Poole, who is ultra talented, and allow him, empower him to be the best version of himself. And so if that happens, does that mean that Jordan Poole is the championship centerpiece superstar for the Wizards in the future? No. He's not. Like, Jordan Poole is good, but he's not that good. I mean, frankly, he's already a remarkable story. This is a guy who's a late first-round pick and, I think could be an all-star this year in Washington if they win any games. But like the idea that, and I'm not predicting this is the most likely outcome, but the idea that Jordan Poole couldn't go out and average 27 points a game this year is certainly not off the table. Am I predicting that? No. He'll probably be somewhere 24, 25, kind of inefficient at times. He'll have some games where he goes 3 for 22, and you're like, what the hell was that? Jacks up bad shots. Like, I don't know that. I mean, I won't say I don't know for sure, but like, I highly doubt Jordan Poole is the best player on any kind of winning basketball team. But he's a really good piece to have on a winning basketball team. He's proven that because he helped Golden State win a championship. So if he can prove, though, to be a professional, to do the dirty work, to be a good teammate, and all that's coming out of Washington is like, man, Jordan Poole just showed up every day for work, showed a maturity that he might have lacked before. He really grew up and is developing into a special basketball player. Wizards could flip him for a first-round pick or 2 next year. He'll be in that sweet spot where he'll have 3 years left on his deal. He'll have, let's see if I can pull this up again real quick. He'll have 3 years left on his deal at 29, 31, and 34 million. And those last 2 years, there's expected to be a pretty significant cap jump. So think of that as like almost almost like 25 to $27 million a year straight across of kind of where our mentals are right now. Like, that's not a bad deal. And so what's essential for Winger, for Dawkins, for obviously Wes Unseld Jr. at the coaching level, and in some ways Poole could be the test for Wes. Like, if Wes can create the environment that Jordan Poole thrives in, hey, man, like, we need you to defend. We need you to do this. I'm going to trust you with this. I'm going to help you get there. I could 100% see a world in which that's kind of the test case of Wes Unseld Jr. staying for the long term. And even if that means trading Jordan Poole, but if he shows he can be the right guy to kind of create the culture, drive home the principles of what they want to be as a basketball team, and Dawkins, and especially Winger, because this is kind of his level, create the resources, from, the training necessities, but also, the mental side of it. Do they have the right sports psychologists? Do they have the right, people around in terms of player development to make sure that a guy like Jordan Poole is maximized? He's a phenomenal test balloon for this franchise. And so, while is it more fun if we get to sit here and talk about how Jordan Poole could help them win games and ultimately move towards a championship? That's not the stage of the rebuild we're at. The stage we are, I made this analogy on Twitter earlier. Like, this is not checkers. This is chess. And the difference in chess and checkers is, in chess, you're thinking about what's the next move. This move is setting up the next one, which is setting up the next one. And sometimes there are things that are out of your control because obviously your opponent gets to move in between. So what is the move for down the line? You have a best case scenario, and like chess, I don't know any of the actual chess strategies, the names. So if you're a chess person, like, my analogy only runs so deep. But conceptually speaking, 4 moves down the line, if you're running the insert chess name strategy here, move, like, you know what you want to do. But you also know the counter move if your opponent does something that is advantageous to them. And so the thing that we're talking about with Poole is making sure that, or to make the chess analogy complete here, with Poole is he's a pawn in this. Not to say that he's not skilled. Like, he can be a bishop or a rook or something. But, like, we're still moving pawns. This game just started. They just got the pieces on the board. And yet they've already done a Beal trade. They've already done a Porzingis trade. We'll see if they can facilitate a sign and trade for Kuzma somewhere that gets them some asset. But you don't. I mean, I guess there are probably some chess moves where you start. What is it? What's the little horsey guy? The knight? Yeah, you move your knight first, and maybe that's the Beal trade. But mostly we're moving pawns on this chessboard right now. And I think that's the important thing to remember is they might know 4 or 5 moves down the road, but in many ways they are moving their pawns. They are being smart. They're trying not to make mistakes. And ultimately, we will see what other moves become available. You just want to be ready when they happen. And that's where they are in this rebuild right now. And that's how Poole fits into it. And, to completely knock all the pieces off the board of the chess analogy and run away from it as fast as I can because I think I tortured it to death, he's going to test their culture in a way that's good. That's not me saying, like, Jordan Poole, bad dude, why did they bring him here? But if you can support a young player who's been through the things that Jordan Poole has been through, that says a lot about your basketball team. It says a lot about the people you brought in. And it should tell you you're on the right track, whether he is a part of the long-term plan or is simply a guy to acquire, to rehab, and ultimately trade 6 months from now, 8 months from now, whenever the trade deadline is, next February, or a year from now, or a year and a half from now, or 2 years from now. But making sure you have the systems in place to maximize him is the first step in that. I guess the second step. First step was they acquired him. Jordan Poole, again, coming to the Wizards, averaged 20.4 points per game last year, 4.5 assists for the Warriors. When we get back, Anthony, what do we want to do when we get back? We got a couple calls lined up potentially?
Yeah, we can get some calls.
Okay, so let's take some calls on the Jordan Poole news. Jason Smith, actually, let's set up the rest of the show. I haven't even told you What else is going on today? Jason Smith's coming by at 5 o'clock. He's going to sit in the chair right here next to me. So Sticks is on the show. Christian Leitner is going to come on at 5:45-ish today. He's in the building. Wizards draft party. The alums are here. So if you obviously want to come down to Capitol Arena later, meet these guys. But we're excited to have Christian Leitner on the show. I think he's actually a really interesting guy to ask about Jordan Poole, someone who had an obvious reputation in terms of his attitude at times during his career and probably had to make an attitude adjustment. Christian Leitner's NBA career, by the way, better than many of you probably think it was. Like, eventually turned himself into an all-star. So we'll ask Leitner about that coming up at 5:50. Again, we got Jason Smith at 5, and then the Hall of Famer David Aldridge stops by at 6. NBA Draft tonight coverage here on the Team 980. We're live from Capital One Arena today on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
All right, the trade is basically done now. Sources telling ESPN, amongst others, that the Wizards are sending Chris Paul to the Warriors for Jordan Poole. Poole comes back, the 23, soon-to-be 24-year-old who's got 4 years left on his contract. Paul headed to Golden State in pursuit of a championship, and he will be staying at Golden State. They're not looking to flip him. He is going to play with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and company. That also helps finalize the Bradley Beal trade, although this hasn't been submitted to the league and such yet. But ultimately, the Wizards are going to get 6 second-round picks from the Phoenix Suns and the ability to pick swap in 2024, 2026, 2028, and 2030. Landry Shamet also, as expected, coming in that deal to Washington. NBA Draft tonight starts at 8. Our coverage in full at 7. Linnell and Naki join me at 6:30. Here, do not change that channel. We have everything you need right here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Jason Smith's going to join us at the top of the hour, and I can guarantee you that he'll be here because he might be sitting next to me right now. So Sticks will be with us coming up in just a few minutes. Take some calls, though, first. 301-230-0980 on the Jordan Poole trade and all of the other trades. Let's go to Steve on line 3, Anthony. Let's go to Steve. Thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, how you guys doing? I just want to say that, the moves that this new regime are making is long overdue. I'm just glad that some fresh eyes outside the organization were brought in to really look at what they were doing and what direction they were going in. So I'm very happy and confident. Only thing I'm worried about is actually Wes Unseld Jr. I don't know his true coaching ability yet. I think it really hasn't been demonstrated. I think he was supposed to be a defensive specialist, but it just seems like he's had a lot of problems on the personnel side, and I don't know if that was because of him or if it was because of Tommy Shepard, but that's my only comment.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for the call. To be frank, I don't know what Wes Unseld is either. And I think a lot of the personnel issues that you reference are kind of the point. And frankly, when I talk about personnel, I'm talking about players. I'm also talking about people above him who was empowered to, have say in what, and kind of some of the statements publicly made about certain players being here and how they might have felt about it. I don't know how that affects on the court stuff. Every time I've talked to Wes, I've come away going, that's an NBA head coach. He's incredibly smart. He knows the game. I think he knows what has to happen. But the magic of coaching isn't knowing. Most people know how to do the things. I talk about this all the time with NFL coaches. There aren't a lot of dumb NFL offensive coordinators when it comes to football stuff. I was going to say something else about non-football stuff, but, connect the dots. When you talk about X's and O's, though, most of them, they can draw up any play. It's how you communicate it to your players and ultimately get them to execute. And I think that's the ultimate test for Wes. And then the other thing is what I talked about in the last segment. A guy like Jordan Poole, who needs a little love, who needs to be, have his kind of image rehabbed in the league, if you will. If Wes can help facilitate that, either to help him be a part of a team that's winning here or to flip him and, get some assets back to help you build the winner in the future, that's going to tell us a lot about Wes Unseld Jr. But here's the thing. The front office didn't hire Wes. And while Michael Winger interviewed him for the Clippers, and there is some familiarity, and I think they think highly of him, if Wes isn't the guy that they want to implement the way they want to play and everything, then the harsh reality is they'll make a change a year from now. That's just the league. We've all watched this for far too long to know that it goes any other way. It sucks because Wes is a great dude, and obviously his family history with this franchise makes for a pretty remarkable story. But at the end of the day, they want to win, and if there's not a belief in the highest levels of the front office that Wes is the guy, then they'll move on. But that's what this year is for. This year is a test case in a lot of ways. Let's go to Dan in Fort Washington. Dan, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for taking my call. Love the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really like, I'm really liking what Michael Winger and, the organization have been doing. I know a lot of people have people are very upset when Beal was traded and, now that Porzingis.
Were they, or was it just Chris Russell?
Pardon?
I said, were people upset, or was it just Chris Russell that was upset?
I think Chris Russell and, the rest of everybody else. I know, I was listening to him a little bit, the past couple of days. I know he's pretty passionate with what he believes in, but for me and, everyone, and even even Anthony too, we're all open-minded with these trades, and it's for the better. And we all know for a fact that, they could have got a better haul had they done this several years ago before, putting Beal to the max. And I think that, you point out you point out something great. I think that, what they're probably going to do is they're going to have Poole start, he'll get his stats. Yes, we're going to be a bad team, and he's going to average about 25 points, 30 points. And then hopefully, we can flip him to a contender with, better compensation and draft picks. So my question to you is, do you see any other trades? I mean, I know there's a DeLon Wright trade. There's a Monte Morris trade. Do you see anything else that you have a good feeling of that, I'm sure they're not done. Do you feel like they're going to be packaging anything of their compensation for maybe an early pick, maybe Portland's pick?
I mean,
what your thoughts are.
It's a good question, Dan. I'll go ahead and let you go, and I'll answer it while you're off the air. They don't have enough to get Portland's pick. They just don't. And something that's really important to remember, like I just had someone on Twitter ask me, can they call the Pelicans about Zion? They could. They'll get laughed off the phone. And it's because they owe next year's first-round pick to the Knicks, and that pick is top 8 protected. It's then top 10 protected the year after that, on down the list. And because you don't know when that pick is going to convey, the Wizards are not allowed to trade multiple first-round picks, meaning they cannot get into the highest caliber of sweepstakes for the best assets that become available yet. That is something that this front office really should try to do. I'm sure they are just blowing the Knicks up, or will be over the next however long until they get something done. I would trade anything the Knicks want to get that pick back. I mean, at this point, what else? Like, what are we talking about? There's not like some I know it's anything they want. Like, yeah, what's on this roster that you wouldn't trade to have your 2024 first-round pick back next year? And I realize it's top 8 protected, and there's a really good chance they'll be taking it, but it's freeing up that pick that unlocks their ability to make the big trade. And they just don't have that right now. So they're going to continue to chip away at the margins. I would imagine Monte gets sent out. I think DeLon could stay or go. I said this a couple times over the last couple of days. If I'm a playoff team, I am beating down the Wizards' door for DeLon Wright. He was so good last year. He so heavily impacts winning. You can trust him with major defensive assignments late in games. Like, I would want DeLon Wright if I was another team that was contending as my backup point guard. Denny Avdia is an interesting one. He's young, but he's extension eligible fairly soon. So, does a team is a team willing to give up a pretty good first-round pick for Denny Avdia? And because of where the Wizards are with their timeline, do they consider that? These are the questions that I think they're asking internally. It will depend on what offers come in. But, yeah, I would say the short answer to your question, Dan, is everybody's on the table. There is no player on the Wizards roster right now that I would consider untouchable for the right price. And that is a very different scenario than I feel like this team, and a very different way than this team has operated the past couple of years. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We'll get back to some of your calls a little bit later in the show. But coming up next, Jason Smith joins us on set here at Capital One Arena.
The Hoffman.
Hour 2 from Capital One Arena, NBA Draft Show coming up tonight. I always feel very silly when we play those clips and I have a guest, especially one on set that I can see. And I'm like, hey, Jason Smith, welcome to our very dumb radio show.
Oh, not even close. That is awesome. It's great content. That's what you're talking about right there.
That's what we're trying to do. Anthony, we can skip the Not My Beat imaging. Jason's here, Wizards alum, Jason Smith, with us to break down everything that's happened.
Anything and everything. The
There's
craziness
so much
that is happening right now.
There's so much happening. So let's say if we were hanging out on the last day of the season. I was like, hey, man, you're going to have a new GM. You're going to have a new team president. Brad's going to be traded. Kristaps is going to be gone. Kyle's going to opt out. And Jordan Poole's going to be a Wizard. How many heads would you have looked at me and said that I had?
You're crazy. You are absolutely crazy. You got 5 heads right now, and I think you're lying out of all of them. But I think as a player, you know that the team was definitely going to change, good or bad, regardless. There's never a team that stays together and has every single player that's the same. Now, granted, you have the Spurs teams and maybe the Warriors teams that keeps that core.
Right.
But all the interchangeable pieces, you want to change them because you want to win. The Wizards have been sitting right there at that 10 to 12 spot for a while now, and it's been kind of lethargic. The Wizards fans are getting a little tired of it. I think now that you get the new president, new GM coming in, they're given an influx of new. Well, guess what? That could create to a new scenario of not necessarily 10 or 12, but new winning. Not necessarily right now either. You got to be patient with it. It's going to take time. It's going to be a process, and I'm not saying process because of Philly.
Right.
But I'm saying
they really
process.
did kind of ruin
I
that.
know, right?
Yeah.
But going forward, it's going to take some time. Not maybe this year, maybe next year, but the pieces that they're going to get back and the trade pieces and maybe develop some young players.
Right.
It's going to be a fun time to be a Wizards fan.
Let me ask you this. How many teams did you play for in your career?
I played for 6.
For 6. What's the best culture you were ever a part of?
You know, the best culture that I really had was down in New Orleans my first year. I was actually with Chris Paul, a former Wizard that got departed. It wasn't really actually a Wizard.
Right.
But going down there with Monty Williams and that coaching staff, they really taught me what it's like to be a professional, to be an athlete who takes care of his body, who really realizes that it's an 82-game marathon. It's not a sprint. You have to go out there. You take care of business on the nights that you don't necessarily feel like playing basketball. But those are the games that are important if you want to have postseason aspirations. I think that they realized that. They taught me that. And then you take that on to another organization that maybe doesn't have that. You're more valuable as a player. And the more you do that, the more value you have in this league.
So the reason I want to ask that is one of the things that I talked about earlier with Poole specifically. Like, this is a guy who had a really rough season last year, starting with Draymond mashing him in the face in training camp, a video that gets out, which makes it even worse because then everyone in the world sees it, right? So he had a down season shooting. He still averaged 20 points a game, but then his playoff run was not very good. He's going to have to come here and, like, he needs a little bit of, I say rehab, like just NBA image rehab, right? His ego probably needs a little bit of rehab if he's going to be the best version of himself. So if you're Michael Winger at the top of the organization, Will Dawkins at his level at GM, and then Wes is the coaching staff, what are the things that you think they need to put in place around a guy like Poole to make sure that he does grow, to build a culture like you had in New Orleans?
Well, it all depends on going with the coaching staff of building around Jordan Poole, or if he is just another piece that you want to build together with the entire organization rising. I think with Jordan Poole, he's a tremendous talent in this league.
Yeah.
He can score.
And I'm asking that with, like, whether he's here for the long term or you're just trying to build him up to trade him a year from now.
Well,
right?
I think that you keep him for the long term. He's a young asset. He's a very talented offensive player, but I think that really troublesome locker room over in Golden State where you had to deal with Draymond, he's an alpha. Absolutely an alpha. And you try and go against that as a young player. Granted, he is supremely talented, but you try and do that against a championship alpha dog who is the catalyst of the team over there, it's not going to bode well for you. And it becomes, we squashed that beef in the locker room, but as the season progresses, you still kind of have that awkward moment of, like, there was still moments, even in the playoff run that they had, where Jordan would kind of blow off Draymond, and you kind of see those subtleties. Now, granted, I wish I could be there, a fly on the wall at the games, and those are the things that I wish I could see day in, day out with the team here at hand with the Wizards. Those little subtleties of, like, all right, who's vibing on the team or who's not vibing on the team. That's what I think kind of progressed to either Jordan was going or Dre was going. Now, you saw Draymond opt out of his contract.
Right.
Granted, you think, okay, maybe he's just trying to get more years. He's getting a little bit older. He wants to maximize his earning potential. Now with Jordan, that was a tough situation, especially with the new GM coming in for the Warriors. He's saying, you know what? We were right there on the cusp of doing a back-to-back championship. I feel like we still have more in the tank with this team. I feel like Chris Paul could be an addition to the team. They've said that they want to make sure that they keep him around. They don't feel like waiving him or cutting him.
Yeah.
So I
love
think
that
that
fit, by the way.
Absolutely. You keep Chris Paul in the mix, a veteran person who hasn't necessarily won everything, but he's gotten right there. If he can stay healthy, he could be a very big difference maker for them.
He's the kind. We haven't talked about the Golden State side of this yet, so I'll do this real quick.
Oh, there's lots of sides to this, baby.
I love just like having basketball people and nerding out for real quick. But like, hey, do you want to add a super hyper competitive dude who's got the highest basketball IQ in the last 20 years in the league to Golden State? Yeah, I do. I'm interested in that.
Absolutely.
And he also attacks areas on the floor that they haven't traditionally attacked, which like is very interesting for Steve Kerr to kind of figure out of, do you push Chris to be a little bit more of a three-point shooter? How much do you play him with the other guys? You know, I look at him as someone who could play with Klay Thompson and get Klay better shots. And they've always kind of needed, okay, when Steph and Draymond are on the floor, who's that guy that's created? And it's been a bunch of different players over the years, from Jared Jack back in the early days all the way through the different guys that they hope Poole would develop into that. And he just didn't really obviously fit the role exactly the way they needed. So is that probably a one-year thing for him? Yeah, he's 38 years old.
I was going to say he's 38 years old. There's not too many years after that.
But, like, for a team that's older and is trying to squeeze every little bit out, like, I actually love that move for Golden State.
They have been so good for so long. They're trying to get every last drop out of that lemon. It has been great for them. I think adding Chris Paul is going to be an interesting dynamic because he is a true point guard. But with that motion of that offense, it's literally you get it to Draymond Green, and then you run a split action with the point guards. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving action. Now, traditionally with Chris Paul, he has the ball in his hand, and he's going pick and roll and then maybe find people out of that. That's not necessarily Golden State's game, but if you insert that in, that creates another dimension for the Warriors to go out there and attack you. Not just, all right, we're going to give it to Draymond, who can't shoot, can't dribble, doesn't really want to go to the basket, and run a split action with Klay and Steph. Well, now you got to integrate Chris Paul in there. Pick and roll with Looney, pick and roll with Dre, give the ball to Dre, have a guy flying to the rim, Andrew Wiggins. There's so many possibilities that make that team even more dangerous now.
I also look at, like, hey, Jonathan Kuminga.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
We're going to bring in Tyson Chandler to teach you what to do.
Yep.
And you're going to go to Chris Paul pick and roll school. And, like, you're going to have two different offenses. You're going to have the Steph, Klay, Draymond offense, and then when the second unit comes in, gives them something else in the playoffs to kind of a slow it down type of thing. Like, there's so much they can do with him. And just like, again, you know, it's funny because you talk about like the team dynamics element of it. A lot of times you bring in young players to kind of keep it fresh, right?
Yeah.
You can't actually run the same unit back every year. You need someone who's hungry.
Yep.
And like, forget a young guy who's coming in and trying to kind of bite from the bottom, if you will.
Yep.
You've got 38-year-old Chris Paul who desperately wants to win an NBA championship. Yep. And they're going to want to do that for him. Like, I mean, I don't know if there's a good example of a locker room you were in like that, where you just like really want to do it for one guy in there. But I think the motivation for them this year is going to be so high, in part because they want to do it for this guy that they have so much respect for, because they competed against him. You know, some of those Clippers-Warriors series were dogfights back in the day.
Oh, my gosh,
Dogfights, the Warriors always won, and I'm sure they will remind him of that.
Yes.
But, you know, that competitiveness and also the respect level for CB3, I think, is going to help elevate them this year.
I think the perfect example for me in my career, now granted, we weren't championship aspirations whatsoever, but when I played up in New York with the Knicks for a year, we had a guy, Pablo Prigioni.
Oh, yeah.
Old, beyond old, but
he
kept his body in shape.
I didn't think we'd have a Pablo Prigioni reference on the show today.
Yeah,
I'm here for it. Let's go.
So having him, you always loved it when he was in the game, because he was that guy, kind of that Alvarado for the younger crowd of hiding in the corner and getting the full court steals and getting layups or creating for your teams. He didn't want to score the ball whatsoever, but he wanted to make his teammates around him better. To have a guy like that on your team and you go out there and you perform at a high level, and as old as you are, you feel nothing but the best moment for them if you win. If you do bad and if you don't get the win, you still feel great because of the way that they played. You're 21 years old and you're feeling the way that you're feeling. To see a 35, 36, 38-year-old man go out there and do the same thing and see what it takes out of his body on a nightly basis on the flight, how he's icing his knees, his shoulders, he's icing everything just to go out there and compete at the highest level. And you're coming in as a rookie or a second-year, third-year guy, and you see that, it really makes you realize, hey, this is a profession now. This is my career. If I take care of my body, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
And I think he can portray that to the young guys. And he's done that throughout his entire career. Whenever they said, oh, we're going to write Chris Paul, if we're going to send him to Houston, made the team better.
Yep.
Send him off even again
Like
to
15 to 20
Oklahoma
wins
City
a year better.
and say, oh, this team has a .08 chance to make the playoffs. Yeah, they made the playoffs. It's great.
Yeah, it's incredible the way that he literally 15 to 20 wins a year. It's crazy.
Yes.
I will say, whenever you said Pablo Prigioni, in my head is Mike Breen going, Pablo Prigioni, just one of the
New York
best,
Knicks announcer, baby.
one of the best like New York names, Pablo, and just
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so good, so good.
Oh, yeah.
Sticks, always good to see you, buddy.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
We got to do this more, baby.
Yeah.
We got to do this
Done.
more. I can
And-
talk basketball all day just like you.
You want come in studio literally anytime you want.
Let's do it.
All right, Jason Smith, everybody, sticks with us here on the Hoffman Show. More of your calls next on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. Naki and Linnell coming up tonight here on the Team 980. They'll join me just over an hour from right now, 6:30. We cross over until 7. We'll also be broadcasting live on 106.7 The Fan. And then coming up at 7, they take over in full. Thanks to Jason Smith for stopping by. Of course, great Wizards alum with us here on the Team 980. Should have Christian Leitner on a little bit later as well. Go back to draft night 1992. Some memories with him. Now, though, taking some more calls. 301-230-0980. Thoughts on the Jordan Poole trade. Poole headed to the Wizards. Got 4 years left on that contract. The extension he signed last offseason. Could be a part of the Wizards' future. Could be a stepping stone for him to ultimately go somewhere else. More resources coming back for the Wizards in the future. But for right now, Jordan Poole, the main piece coming back for Bradley Beal via Chris Paul, if you will. Paul headed to Golden State. Let's go to Mark in Chevy Chase. Mark, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, I normally weigh in on the Commanders, but today I want to weigh in on the Wizards real fast and say, I hope we are just terrible this year. We've been so bad since 78, and now it's time to get bad, get another first-round pick. Hopefully that happens now. And just one thing, I hope the Commanders Stadium's in D.C. I'll listen to it off the air. Thanks.
All
Go
right.
Wizards next 2 seasons. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Mark. I mean, yeah, the thing about the NBA is, like, of course you want to be bad because if you want to get those top picks, because that's the best odds, and math is math. Sometimes, Anthony, that math be mathin', and you're gonna have the best chance of getting a better draft pick, and the better draft pick you have, if you scout right, you should get the best player. We also know, especially in the recent history of the NBA, it doesn't always work out like that. Whether it's lottery luck, which the Wizards have basically never had, whether it's the top player not necessarily winding up being the best player in the draft. Like, these are the things that you deal with, but you'd rather be lucky than good, but luck isn't a plan. And that's something that I think is going to be a pretty common refrain for me over the next couple of years when talking about this basketball team. You want to do the best you can to put yourself in a position to be lucky, because there's always an element of luck. But at the end of the day, can you – and I would say this too, when you talk about being bad, like, I don't think they should try to be bad. I don't think they should try to be good. Like, I don't think you intentionally put out G League guys just for the sake of it, so you are intentionally basically losing games. But hey, Jordan Poole, you're going to play 15 minutes a game this year because you're too good and could help us win too much. No, you want to create a good culture and a competitive environment. However, you also are not trying to maximize your winning, because let's play that game out for a second. Then we'll get back to some more calls. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. What's the best version of the Wizards this year? What's the absolute best they could be? They could be middle of the pack again, but they don't have a path to being good. There's no version of the Wizards this year that is feasibly good. The best version of them is probably you re-sign Kuzma. You then have Kuzma, Poole, Tyus Jones, like DeLon Wright, Daniel Gafford, Denny Avdia. Like, that's a 30-win. I mean, they could maybe win 35 again, what they won last year, but they're probably a 30-win basketball team. So there's no reason to try and maximize that, because what does it get you? Not in the playoffs. You don't even give yourself a chance to get lucky in the playoffs. You're just not good. And so at that point, you think about more long-term and maximizing the assets as they exist, and moving forward when opportunity presents itself to acquire, whether it's a good player or a better draft pick or more draft picks in the future. Let's go to Lap. Lap, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's up, Craig? Hey, what's up, man? Hey, good show, man. I like the interview with Jason, man. That's my guy, man. I always was a big fan of his, and I like your comparison with Jordan Poole. It's been some trade scenarios for a while with the Jordan Poole, Maxey, and then the Jalen Brown. So I'm glad we got one of them. And, I'll take the Jordan Poole. I had a feeling Kuzma wasn't going to be here. So it just kind of sucked because I wish we could have had Rui still, and that would have been nice to see all those young guys, playing, at least still being exciting. And it still can be. So I'm hoping we can get Anthony Black in the draft. And we'll see, man. We'll see what happens. But I like the pick, and I wanted somebody young, and we got him. And I think we got to see what happens, man. But great job with the management, what they're doing so far, with what they have to work with. So we'll see, man. But keep up the good work, Craig.
Thank you, Lap.
Talk to you soon, bro.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, the comparing Poole to some of the other young guys that you mentioned, like Maxey's an interesting one because like Poole's more expensive. I think Tyrese Maxey's a better player. I know that might sound – I mean, it sounds less crazy now because Poole is coming off a pretty rough – I mean, I keep saying a pretty rough season. He averaged 20 points a game last year. 20 points per game and 4.5 assists per game is not bad, but certainly not as efficient, not as good of a shooting season as he had in the years prior. Certainly the big breakout year in his second year in the league. I mean, but he's only 3 years in. I think Maxey is a better defensive player. I think he's more reliable in general. I think the speed that he brings to the game is so special. But Poole's got some of that as well. So, I mean, it's funny because I say there's no way that they were getting Tyrese Maxey, and part of that is the contract. But I just think he's a more reliable player than Poole. Brown's in a different category, and also the money that Brown is set to be owed. Like, what Maxey is going to get and what Poole is on now, what he's signed, is, I guess, call it like the junior max, if you will. You come into the league, you're on your rookie deal, and then the next one's going to be in like the 120. I think the deal Poole signed was like 128. We're not talking about the $290 million max that Jalen Brown's about to sign. That's the 35% max. This is like a 20% max. It's a very different max contract that Jordan Poole is on compared to what Brown was on. But certainly that is the one that Maxey would sign. I'd rather have Maxey, but, again, talking myself in circles here, that was never on the table. They were not getting Tyrese Maxey. And we'll see how they continue to flip the roster. Let's go to Spencer online, too. Spencer, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, great show, great guest.
Thank you.
I wanted to commend the front office for the trade. Poole, I believe, is a really, really talented player, but I don't think he's on the same level of some of the other ones that were being discussed. Also, like a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, De'Aaron Fox.
Right.
I think we only maximize the impact of that trade if we can flip that into a team looking for a final piece, say like Oklahoma City or Utah or New York, and parlay that into even more first-round picks so we can roll the dice to get our own De'Aaron Fox or our own Domantas Sabonis or our own SGA. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. My eyes just got real big when you said the Knicks. I doubt that the Knicks want Jordan Poole right now, but holy crap, if they want him and they want to give that first-round pick back in return, get Jordan Poole on a plane to New York right now. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I do think it's something to watch maybe in the future. I think Brooklyn's an interesting one. They've continued to kind of build it, and they're looking to add, I think. I think there's a lot of interesting places. The tough thing about Poole that's always going to – and thanks, Spencer, for the call. The thing that's always going to limit Jordan Poole is he's a smaller guard, and last year he was horrendous defensively, like unplayably bad in the playoffs defensively. So if you're a playoff team looking for the final piece, like Cleveland's an interesting one because they're really solid defensively. They've got guys like Mobley and Jared Allen. If they feel in a couple of years like they need another third scorer, someone to back up Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, then is Jordan Poole a candidate there? Probably not. He's not there. Those two are both small guards. Like, how many can you absorb? But that's the kind of team where you find someone who needs a scoring punch. What Dallas wanted in Kyrie Irving this year. Can you find a team that needs that score and has a solid enough defensive backbone to absorb what Poole is defensively? And that's the team that you target in the future. I don't know who that team is. We're still potentially at least a year away from that. I think we'll have a better look at the trade deadline, depending on how Poole is playing here, and whether or not they do actually want to move on. That is kind of the funky part of today is we're all ready to make the next 3 moves. Those might not happen for years, but the fact that they've already made this one is that first move on the chessboard, and we'll see what ultimately trickles down from there. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. David Aldridge, the Hall of Famer, coming up at 6 o'clock here on the Team 980. All right, we're broadcasting live from Capital One Arena. Hour from now, our draft crew joins me here on set. Linnell and Chris Naki. half an hour from right now, the Hall of Famer David Aldridge, Christian Laettner in 15 minutes. And right now it's our pleasure to welcome back to the show our guy Bonta Hill, of course, hosts out in the Bay Area. Bonta, what's up, man? Welcome back to the show.
Oh, man, good to be back. Good to be back.
So let me ask you from your side of it before I pick your brain for our side of it. What's the reception of the news out there that Jordan Poole is being sent to Washington and Chris Paul is about to be a Warrior?
It's absolutely stunning for a lot of us out here. You know, I literally was in swim class with my daughter, and I said, and today on my show, on the morning show, I just thought something's brewing with the Warriors, and I don't know what it is. But something is going to happen, and they're going to make a splash here because I think Joe Lacob wants to start this new era, this new regime without Bob Myers with the bang. I didn't think it was going to be Jordan Poole for Chris Paul, who's 38 years old, nor did I think they're going to trade draft picks along with Jordan Poole and Ryan Rollins, of course, who they drafted last year in the second round out of Toledo. To the Bay Area, Chris Paul's always been a villain, one of the most hated villains during his whole dynastic run. And the fact that they're trading for Chris Paul and he's going to remain a Warrior. And a lot of fans were just thinking, well, we thought we needed size. We thought we needed physicality. You got beat up on the boards against the LA Lakers. You got dominated in the paint. You couldn't do anything at the rim. And the answer, at least early on, is let's trade for a 38-year-old point guard who looks like a traffic cone on defense these days. I mean, we've all watched the playoffs the last few years, let alone the injury history, the flopping, the antics. This is a tough one to swallow for Warrior fans. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, Jordan Poole had his pitfalls last year, but he was a young stud who, you know, we watched grow and develop into a nice, bona fide NBA player. Everybody in the Bay is shocked right now. They don't know who to point the finger at, either Draymond Green, Mike Dunleavy Jr., or Joe Lacob, the owner.
That's so interesting because as Bonta Hill is with us, Jason Smith, former NBA player, was just sitting here with me, and we were chopping it up. Uh-huh. We both love it. I realize it's obviously there's more to be done for the Warriors to get where they need to go, but the idea of adding the hyper-competitive Chris Paul, who's got the basketball IQ through the roof, to that group, I actually kind of love it for the Warriors, and maybe it's just like the sentimental nature of, I know obviously when he hasn't been my villain, if you will, it's easier to swallow from afar, but I actually feel like from a basketball sense, it gives them another half-court option in the playoffs. He's not going to be asked to have nearly the load he's had, which should make him be able to actually be healthy during the playoffs. And from just like a motivation standpoint, there's definitely a respect level for him. And, you know, for a locker room that was fractured last year to kind of get motivated, be like, we got to get CP3 a ship. I actually kind of love it for the Warriors.
Well, you may be the first person who loves it. Now there's some people talking themselves into it. Here's what I would say to that. Kevin Durant joined the Phoenix Suns last year, and I get KD was hurt. But he joined the Phoenix Suns with the impression of he's going to take some of the load off of Chris Paul and Devin Booker. And Chris Paul still got hurt despite taking a backseat to Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in the playoffs.
Oh, KD did also get hurt like 2 games into being there.
He did, and Chris Paul had to do some things. But at the same time, Chris Paul gets to the playoffs, and I've seen it in 2018 with the hamstring injury. I've seen it in 2019 against the Warriors in the second round, and we've seen it again during the NBA Finals against Milwaukee, and we saw him get cooked 2 years ago against the Dallas Mavericks where they involved them in every single pick and roll. And here's the thing, the Warriors want to play fast. They want to get up and down the floor, create open shots. We're going to have to slow the pace down and play a different brand of basketball that they haven't played under Steve Kerr before. So that's very interesting. Defensively, if you're playing them alongside Stephen Curry, who you're going to hide on defense? You know, is he going to be in the closing lineup with the Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Andrew Wiggins? Well, boy, that's not a really good defensive team at this point. So it's a lot of mixed signals. And then if he does run a second unit, who's going to be part of that second unit? Is Jonathan Kuminga still going to be a Golden State Warrior? You know, is Moses Moody going to be a Golden State Warrior? So it's a lot to figure out here. Now, the cap space, the cap aspect of it is Chris Paul's got another year left on the deal. You can release that money in a couple of years. It's great. It lowers the luxury tax long-term for the Golden State Warriors as they try to get under that threshold there, that tax apron. But giving up on a guy like Jordan Poole, I think people in Washington will love it because whatever happened this past season, and we know what happened before the season, which had a direct effect on everything that transpired with the Golden State Warriors. Here's what I know about Jordan Poole. He's in a gym early. He leaves the gym late. He is a basketball junkie, and he's a showman. He's going to be an entertainer. Now, yeah, he slipped up a little bit last year, but despite everything that happened, the guy still got 20 points a game. He still got your buckets during the regular season and played all 82. So I think DC is going to love this young man from where he grew with the Golden State Warriors as a rookie to where he is now. I think it's a fair deal for him. 4 years, 123 with incentives there. I think DC is going to love this kid. I really do. Jordan Poole, I think the Warriors so low on him, to be honest with you. The trade picks and Jordan Poole and Ryan Rollins for Chris Paul at this age, when they didn't need to get smaller, they needed to get bigger. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Maybe I need a couple hours to kind of digest it and step away from it. But right now, I just don't like it for the Golden State Warriors. I don't.
Yeah. My last attempt at convincing you would be, imagine the shots that he's going to get for Klay Thompson when Steph is off the floor. So that. Yeah. There's like little things like that I think I'm excited about. But a big old we'll see. Bonte Hill is with us from 95.7 The Game out in the Bay Area. So let's focus on Poole, the part that's incoming here in Washington. You just gave us a great synopsis of who he is. My big question is from going away from Golden State, and I realize that, we talk about Golden State's culture, which has been largely unimpeachable. The one impeachable offense has been Jordan Poole and Draymond Green and their run-in last year. So as he comes here and there aren't the veterans in place, there isn't the culture and everything in place that is here, or that is there, how does Poole then get into whatever his new role will be in Washington, a much bigger leadership role, a much bigger responsibility than he ever had in Golden State?
Yeah, it's a great question. Look, he's going to be number one on the scouting report for a rebuilding team. There's no doubt about it. But he's a guard who could get to the cup at will. He's a 90% free throw shooter. He led the league 2 seasons ago in free throw shooting. Again, he's a worker, and I think a change of scenery for him is going to help him do wonders. One, the Draymond incident. How can you get over something like that? I don't care. Anybody's been in a fight. How do you get over something like that happened before the season even started? And then you watch the organization basically say, well, we're a little more pissed about the video being leaked than the actual incident. And Draymond Green doesn't even get punished for it, really. You know what I'm saying? So if you're Jordan Poole, you're saying, dang, what did I do? I'm the one who got my jaw almost broken. You know what I'm saying? So he's got to wear that through most of the season. And then, by the way, I'm coming off the bench now once Klay Thompson and everybody's healthy. And once he came off the bench, it's like, well, am I the sixth man? Am I the seventh man? Am I the eighth man? There was a game they brought in Andre Iguodala before Jordan Poole. And so that role that was evolving for him, whether it was being a facilitator, being a scorer, being in the starting lineup, being off the bench. I mean, think about it. This guy averaged 25 a game starting with the Golden State Warriors this past season. Off the bench, he averaged 15, so obviously that was a thing for him, and now he gets to step into a starting role. So, look, there's going to be turnovers. He was fourth in the NBA last year in total turnovers in 30 minutes a game. He's got to do better with that. The slipping drove everybody crazy. He would always slip 2 to 3 times a game off the floor. But the guy's a great ball handler. He's a showman. He has a great mid-range jumper. At a three-point percentage, 32.5% last year. That's got to be around 35, 36. He's obviously going to get a lot of shots that's going to be available to him. But he was a key cog in that championship team. You guys are getting a player out there, man. He's no scrub whatsoever. He's going to work to get better and better and better. And the chip he's going to have on his shoulder going to a new place. Yeah, sure, there's no veterans there, but he has enough wisdom and enough knowledge from this championship organization, that is the Golden State Warriors, to impart that on the young Wizards, on whoever they draft, whoever they bring in. So, again, I think you guys are getting a player. You guys so low on the player, you don't even have to worry. You never even had to worry about Chris Paul. You got him and flipped him immediately. I think it's a win-win for the Washington Wizards. You're getting yourself one heck of a basketball player. I'm excited to see what Jordan Poole does in that Wizard uniform.
Yeah, and I broke this down earlier. Essentially, the Wizards traded Bradley Beal for Jordan Poole and all them picks and pick swaps, and we'll see how many of them come to fruition. But the biggest question, obviously, for Poole as a player is defensively. Like, he was unforgivably bad in the playoffs. And when I say unforgivably bad, it's because the effort just didn't seem to be there. A lot of swiping as guys drove by, not great effort in moving his feet and staying in front of ball handlers. How much of that was just a kind of a broken psyche and not doing the things he needed to do versus a lack of skill and or understanding of how to be a winning player on that side of the ball in the NBA.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a broken psyche, and not knowing when you're playing, not knowing what your role is on a game-by-game basis had a lot to do with it. And we know defense in the NBA, a lot of guys can't play defense. It's all about trying. Look at Jamal Murray this past postseason. He tried, and he looked like a capable defender. Nikola Jokic, we all say, oh, man, you can run pick and rolls against him all day. He plays our drop coverage. You're going to cook him, right? Well, you know what? Nikola Jokic looked like a very capable defender during the Denver Nuggets championship run. Defense is about trying. And I think Jordan Poole will at least try to play defense this year. Now, he's going to get beat. It's tough to play defense in today's NBA. They call everything. It's an offensive league. They're going to get cooked at some point. But when he tries, he can be an average defender. Now, Steph Curry's not a great defender, but he at least tries. And his positioning and his keeping your hands up. Too many times what gets Jordan Poole in trouble is he's defending with his hands down, which is weird. It's like you kind of need your hands here. Whether to play the passing lanes, whether to swipe at the basketball, or contested jumper. I mean, go look at Austin Reeves when he made that half-court shot in Game 6. Was it Game 6? Yeah, it was Game 6. And Jordan Poole just kind of olayed him and let him get a free shot at the basket from half-court, and Austin Reeves nailed it. I mean, that's Jordan Poole's defense in a nutshell this past season. So he's got to try and put in more effort, and then that will come because he has the footwork. I mean, you see his offensive game. You can't tell me he doesn't have footwork to move side to side. I think it's a want-to and a little bit of that broken psyche that he had all season long and the uncertainty of his playing time, the uncertainty of whether or not he was going to start or come off the bench.
Bonte Hill, 95.7 The Game, morning show out there. Always great to talk to you, man. Appreciate your time. Know it's a busy day. And good luck with your, I call it self-therapy for the next couple of hours to make sense of the Chris Paul deal.
Oh, man, I haven't even been on the air tomorrow morning. It's going to be a wild show, but I appreciate you guys having on me. Enjoy Jordan Poole. He's a really good kid. Look, he's going to be a little shy when it comes to the media and whatnot because he has trust issues with people talking about him. A lot of people started slandering him out here and basically blaming him for getting punched. Jordan Poole's a really good kid. He's a really outgoing kid. He's eccentric. I think you guys will love him, man. I hope he flourishes out there in the nation's capital. I think you got a good one here. And you guys bought low. You bought low, and I think this guy's going to be – going to be a good player for you guys for many years to come.
That's really good to hear, man. I'm excited to talk to him when he gets here, and hopefully we'll reconnect soon, and I'll let you know how it went.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
All right, Bonte Hill, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Team 980, we're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in just a few minutes, Christian Laettner stops by. What are his memories from draft night all the way back 1992? We will reminisce with Christian Laettner, Wizards great, or at least Wizards alum. He had some good years here, really good years here. That's next here on the Team 980. First, though, a look at what's trending. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Scheduled to be joined sometime relatively soon by Christian Laettner, of course, Wizards alum, number 3 pick in the 1992 NBA draft. Somehow, Anthony, because of all the trades, we haven't actually even talked about the draft yet, which is crazy because like Jordan Poole. That's an important move. Hey, Jordan Poole, he's going to be a Wizard now. That's probably the most significant transaction of the day, you would think. But who knows? Like maybe they wind up taking someone tonight who turns into a star. Whether it's Anthony Black, who a lot of people like for them, the guard out of Arkansas, who is got just a great feel for the game. Oh, what are you pointing at up there on the screen?
He's actually on TV right now.
Oh, Anthony Black is?
Yes, he is.
All right. Well, I need you to pay attention to the radio, not the television.
I can do both.
Because that doesn't really help our audience. The whole television interview that they can't hear behind. Although if he says something interesting, you could pass it along. No, but like whether it's Anthony Black, there's this kid out of France that was Wemby's teammate. That is super interesting for a lot of people, kind of the big swing if you want to take that. So there's definitely a chance that the most impactful player for the Wizards' future is not Jordan Poole, that it gets acquired today. But we'll see. We'll see tonight. We'll talk about it more with Linnell and Naki coming up. I know a lot of people are high on the point guard out of Michigan as well. So Naki certainly has seen him play in person quite a bit. Kobe, how do you say his last name, Anthony? I should know this. It's Kobe is his first name.
I'm going to mess it up.
All right, so I don't want to mess it up. So we'll have Naki help us out coming up a little bit later.
Have you looked at any of the local guys that are in the draft right now? Because, Cam Whitmore,
yeah,
apparently he's supposed to be sliding or dropping in the draft.
I would love him here.
Cam, you got Jordan Hawkins also. Is that Christian?
No. Jason Smith is the world's greatest teammate. How many years did you play in the league? 11? 12? 12? You know why Jason Smith played 12 years in the league? He's a great teammate. I've been sitting here dying, Anthony, because I did a bad job of feeding myself today, and Jason just went down to the floor and got me popcorn, which is going to be enough to hold me over till dinner, which is really all I need. My wife is going to be having food for me when I get home because Rachel is also a saint and a great teammate. But Jason just did me such a solid. What a gem. What a gem.
Act right there.
What a class act that guy is. What was I saying?
We were talking about the local.
Oh,
guys.
yeah. Like Cam Whitmore. Yeah, considering all the guards they got now,
Yeah.
give me a super defensive wing who can learn how to shoot. Sign me up. Who else do you like from the local? Because you saw these guys play in high school.
Yeah, so I actually just ran into Jordan Hawkins this past Saturday. He was down at the DMV Live watching the high school guys go at it. But Jordan Hawkins, out of UConn, he's a local guy. Really high on him. We actually had a caller call in earlier and was raving about him. He thinks that's the guy we should be taking at 8. I don't know. It's tough. I love Jordan, but I don't know. You never know what the draft is.
Yeah, you just never know how it's going to fall, and who winds up sliding. One of the Thompson twins slides. You could see that. There's some really interesting guys who can really score later for that 35th pick that they pick up in the Memphis deal. So there's a lot of, or from the Celtics, I guess. So there's a lot of, I would say, fairly intriguing names to watch for, and a lot of different paths they could go down. It will obviously depend on what happens before them, but yeah, man. Like the thing that you start to realize though is who the hell are going to be their bigs this year? Like I realize that we don't care so much about the 2023 Wizards in the way that we cared about the 2022 Wizards, right? Like we thought that team, if Kuz and Porzingis and Beal put it together, like I don't know, could they win 45, 46 games and be a pain in the butt in the first round of the playoffs? Like that was at the very least the goal, and then maybe you build off of that. Now it's like, well, we don't really care if they win, but they got to put someone out there. Yeah. And so they got Avia, who's kind of a 3-4. They brought in the kid Xavier Cooks from the G League, or not from the G League, from the Australian League. They got Gafford.
Gafford.
But I don't even know who's going to play forward for them next year. I don't know if they know who's going to play forward for them next year.
My thing is, I think the last like four drafts, we've taken a forward, and it's like, are we really about to do that again in terms of drafting another wing player? Like,
well, I mean, Johnny's a smaller wing, but a wing.
Yeah.
But he's playing 2, maybe 3, but maybe also 1. The other thing is, do they just bring back Kuzma and figure they can trade him later? Because I will say, a team with Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma, while not being very successful, would be kind of fun.
yeah,
They would score. Yeah, there would be so many shots up. Gafford would get 7 offensive rebounds a game because they would just be jacking shots from everywhere.
Yep.
Who's probably got a better basketball opinion than whatever we just did?
I think David Aldridge.
I think you're correct. A DA just got up the stairs, so we're going to go ahead, pop to break. When we get back, the Hall of Famer David Aldridge joins us on set here at Capital One Arena. Draft party just 30 minutes away here on the Team 980.
Daniel Snyder has agreed to sell.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are broadcasting live from Capital One Arena, where the Wizards draft party happens tonight. Doors in just about half an hour here at Capital One Arena. Linnell Willingham, Chris Nockey host our coverage. They'll join us in half an hour and then take the reins at 7. But right now, my pleasure to welcome in the Basketball Hall of Famer from The Athletic. It's David Aldridge. DA.
Great. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. It is good to see you in person.
Good to be seen. Good to be seen.
So nothing going on.
Another boring pre-draft situation.
Yeah, just, who they take at 8. That's all we have to talk about. When you look at this Jordan Poole trade, it's essentially Beal for Poole plus all the picks and the ancillary pieces.
Yeah.
Chris Paul gets rerouted to Golden State, obviously in the shrapnel, if you will. Mm-hmm. But from the Washington side of it, what do you make of both them getting Poole, the basketball player, but also the strategic decision to go after a guy that is young, high upside, has 4 years left on a contract?
Yeah, it's been fun. Fun is not the right word. It's been interesting to watch Wizards' schizophrenic Twitter the last 36 hours. Oh, these guys don't know what they're doing. They're worse than everybody else. The worst ever. Oh, I guess they're okay.
It really does feel like fans wanted them to do something, and this has satisfied the something.
Well,
that's why I go to you. You have insight on the something. Is the something good?
The something is good, yeah. I mean, they didn't. I'm not a poker player, but I know that a 3, a 2, a 7, a 9, and a jack is not a good hand. That's what they had.
I am also
what
not a poker
they had going
player,
to the table.
But I know that too.
They didn't have a good hand. So you make the best out of the hand you've got. They made the best out of the hand that they got. There's nothing that this group can do to make up for the sin of giving Bradley Beal a no trade clause. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing that can be done about that. So they made the absolute best deal they could, wanting to get Bradley off the books. I love this idea. Well, they could have just waited to the trade deadline. Oh, yeah, because Bradley Beal never gets hurt. That's never an issue.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And he's going to change his mind.
Right.
He who controlled the entire process.
And is going to, I mean, come on. It wasn't the best thing that you could possibly get, but it's the thing that you could get today, right? And so I think it was very important for this group to clear the books of Bradley Beal's contract, move on, and then, I always, and again, well, this was not Wizards Twitter. This is Lakers and Clippers Twitter. Well, they should just cut Chris Paul. Why?
Right.
So he can sign for the minimum. Yeah, that's great for the Lakers and Clippers. What does that do for the Wizards? Well, you don't want to play there. Yeah, we know. But
unlike Bradley, he didn't have a no trade clause.
He has no trade clause. He has to, so you have to see what you can get. Now, I thought at the end of the day they would get a deal done with the Lakers. I cannot say I saw this coming with Jordan Poole. So if you look at, to your point, Jordan Poole, 24 years old, was a very important piece to a championship team a year ago, not 6 years ago, a year ago. It's not a minimum contract, but it's not a supermax. I mean, in the NBA, at this stage, paying $25, $30 million for a two guard that can score 20, 22, 24 points a game, it's okay. It's okay. They get the first down the road from Golden State. They get the second down the road from Golden State. They get the pick swaps with the Suns, which, again, don't mean anything, which aren't advantageous now for the Wizards because Phoenix is going to be better than them. So they're not going to swap with them because Phoenix is going to be better. So you're thinking not so much about 24 and 26, but about 28 and 30. Right. So maybe by 28 and 30, the worm has turned a little bit.
Kevin Durant will be 40 in 2028.
Exactly. So that's what you got to think about with that. And a bunch of second-round picks, which may or may not turn into something. I mean, what they are is capital that you can put in other trades down the road. So I'd say and also, look, I'm not saying Ryan Rollins is going to be like a difference maker or everything. I just know before the draft last year, when I do my draft confidentials, people said Ryan Rollins has a super high basketball IQ. And I know that this group values basketball IQ very much. And so whatever Ryan Rollins becomes here, it's going to fit with what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, David Aldridge with us here on the Hoffman Show. The Poole element of it is so fascinating to me because his reputation was dead after the playoffs. I mean, he
had a bad year.
It was really bad. In the playoffs were particularly poor.
Yeah, had a bad season.
Do you see him as a piece here that is rehab and flip? Or do you think that as they start the rebuild, like he's the first piece of the rebuild?
Well, I mean, that's the fascinating thing is that it could go either way, right? Like you could see a scenario where Jordan plays very well next season, has a good year. It's the Eastern Conference. You know, who are the guards in the Eastern Conference that are all-star locks when you think about it? There's a few, but there's not 20.
Jalen.
Yeah, there's not 20 of them, right? So he could be an all-star level caliber player, even though this team will be not good, and we all know that. So if he has a good year, of course you could flip him the next summer for more picks or for something else. Of course you could. You could also hold on to him. I think what I'm this is going to be the fun part for me is trying to think 4 years ahead because that's where Winger and Dawkins are right now.
Right.
They are smack dab in 2027, and what can this team accomplish in 2027? And so down the road, look, Dallas may be desperate by 2025 because I have no idea. I mean, I don't think anybody can say with any certainty what Kyrie Irving's going to do tomorrow, much less in a year.
Kyrie Irving doesn't know what he's doing tomorrow.
Exactly. So
Kyrie Irving also doesn't know what he did yesterday, but that's a different discussion.
Possibly, if you're Dallas, count on that as a piece down the road. And Luka's out is in 2026. That's his out. And I'm not saying they're going to get Luka. I'm saying Dallas knows that that's the out, and they've got to get somebody in there that can help Luka. Now, in 2 years, is that Jordan Poole potentially? Could be.
Right.
Not the difference making. I'm saying a piece that helps you. You know, there's other teams. Look at this. Look at the teams again that are a little ahead of where the Wizards are now, but they've gone down this road of rebuilding. Detroit. I'll get the D's right soon. Detroit, Houston, Orlando.
Oh, right.
They got to start winning soon. Like they can't just keep running
right
through draft picks. At some point, they're going to need a little bit more proven talent to help them get to the next level. Could a guy like Jordan Poole fit in that timeline at 24? Yeah, he could. Good. Not saying any of these things are going to happen. I'm saying this gives them potential options in a couple of years. Also, he could be really good, and they could say, hey, you know what? We're going to keep him because he's an important part of what we're doing here now.
Right.
That could happen too.
So, to me, the thing that becomes very interesting about that is actually the pick tonight.
Yeah.
Because what I've been trying to explain to people is this is chess. You are thinking 3-4 moves ahead.
Exactly.
But what people need to understand is they just put the pieces on the board.
Right.
What's happening today is a pawn getting moved. It's not the final setup of checkmate.
Correct.
So the way that accelerates is if they draft someone tonight who's way better than they think. Obviously, they're going to like who they take because otherwise they wouldn't take them.
Right.
But let's say it's Anthony Black, the most popular name to get mocked to them.
Right.
If Anthony Black is a grade A superstar and pairs well with Jordan Poole, well, then we're talking about being competitive in 3 to 4 years, not 5 to 7.
Correct.
And so I think that's the thing that people don't necessarily understand, and I think it's interesting when you draw comparisons to the Orlandos, the Detroits, all the teams that you mentioned, is you don't really know the timeline until you have that guy.
Right.
And they don't know where that guy is going to come from. Is it someone they draft tonight? Is he a junior in high school right now?
Exactly.
We just don't know.
We don't know, and they don't know. And it's a risk. Look, I'm not saying this is definitely going to turn around in 3 years or 4 years. It could blow up and be awful. And then if it is, they'll all get fired. But here's what I know. If you look at Will Dawkins' track record as a drafter in Oklahoma City, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
They don't usually miss, okay? So I'm not expecting a lot of misses if they're in the top 10 going forward. So whether it's Black, Hendricks, one of the Thompsons or Osser slips. I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce his name. I'm still learning that.
That is my every year, especially now that the kids are not as many college kids, and I can't watch them at least during the tournament. You're like,
Right.
I'm sorry, I've read your name 1,000
No,
times.
no,
and
I've heard it pronounced 3 different ways, and
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to ask him yet. How do you want it pronounced? But,
Right.
But if someone like that was there, now I don't think he will be, but if he was, by all accounts, everybody I've talked to about both of the Thompsons, Amin and Osser, say these are great kids, not good kids, great kids from a great family. And that they are, we all know their athletic ability is off the charts good. But the makeup, again, I know what these guys are going to value. That fits into what these guys are going to value. Are they good people? Are they coachable? And these kids both seem coachable. So if somebody like that were to fall for whatever reason and they get him and he turns out to use, like you said, to be great, well, that changes everything, doesn't it?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so that's what is fascinating about this whole kind of beginning steps to what is it going to be in 3 years. And this is the other thing that people are forgetting when they say, well, why didn't they get more players or picks or something? Because they don't want to give the Knicks their first-round pick next year, which they will have to do if they're good.
Right, it's top 8 next year.
Yeah, and so they want to not do that.
Right.
So there's method behind all of this. So you want to have your pick next year. Now it's not a great draft, but guess what? There'll be somebody to pick.
Yeah.
There's always somebody to pick.
Yeah, the best thing that could possibly happen is they somehow get someone that the Knicks want. Not necessarily tonight in the draft.
Right,
They're not
right,
going to trade
right.
that guy, but like getting that pick back from the Knicks would unlock it. And I think that's like, honestly, David, I think that is the most underrated thing that people are missing in this entire equation, whether it's why you had to trade Beal, why they can't get in on, there's all this bluster out of New Orleans about Zion, and, we'll see if it's real or not. I tend to think at this point it's not, but who knows? If Portland offers 3, they at least have to think about it.
Right. They won't.
Yeah. There you go.
Not for him.
Yeah.
Not for him.
I take your word for it.
Yeah.
But like the Wizards can't get involved in any of that stuff because they can't trade multiple first-round picks right now.
Right.
And so that is another thing that I've tried to bring up on the show that people should just be aware of. You did your NBA Draft Confidential. Great, must read every single year. I always love those when you just get execs that are like, all right, my name's not going anywhere near this. Let her rip.
Yeah.
What was your favorite, whether it's piece of information, anecdote, thing that you got out of someone that was in that piece?
Wow, that is a good question because I talk to so many people. It's hard to remember all of the things that I ask people about. I don't know, Craig. It's all a blur. It's been 3 months of just calling coaches and stuff.
Okay, I'll ask you about specific two guys.
Ask me about specific guys. I can tell you.
Scoot and Brandon Miller.
Okay.
Scoot was the guy that was always like Wembanyama's number 1, has been number 1.
Yeah.
Duh, he's 7'4", he can do everything.
Right.
Got it.
Okay.
But Scoot was the guy that was supposed to be next. It was like in any other year where there's not
He'd be
Victor
number
Wembanyama, he's number 1.
Yeah.
Now he's probably going 3rd.
Yeah.
What do
okay,
people make of that?
I'll tell you what. I'll give you an example. So I talked to a scout, and it wasn't last week, but it wasn't 3 years ago. He had seen Scoot play this year, and he said, Scoot's really talented, but I'm not sure about how he's going to deal with adversity. Is he going to tough his way through it, or is he going to kind of fold up because he kind of shut it down? Midway through the season, he only played in like 19 games for Ignite. That guy texted me this week and said, I was wrong.
Wow.
This kid's great. And
Wow.
his team is not drafting him. So it's not a team that's in the top 5. He said, I did more intel on this kid. This kid's all aces. This kid's terrific. So, and that kind of lines up more with what other people have said about him.
So why, if he's that good, you don't worry about positional fit. You just take the
too
talent.
Talented. Yes.
Is Brandon Miller also that good?
Yes.
Wow.
I think he is that talented. Again, from what people have told me. I'm not going to
Right.
pretend like I've watched every Alabama game this year. But everybody says, well, here's the thing that they say. he's got incredible position flex, as Ron likes to say.
Yeah. It's sad how many phrases have been ruined on this radio show by a variety of DC sports figures.
Right.
Position flex and Ron Rivera,
Right.
check and check.
Right, but the thing they don't know is he an alpha? That's what I keep hearing. Is he an alpha? Scoot, alpha.
Yeah.
Scoot, total alpha. Is Brandon Miller an alpha or not? And it's okay if he's not, but you need to know that. You can't draft him thinking he is going to be that kind of face of the franchise guy. The comp that people gave to me was he doesn't have what Jason Tatum had in high school and in college, which is I want to be the guy. I want to be the face of the franchise. I'm ready for it. This guy's a great player, but he may have to be your number two. You may have to have somebody else that's your face of the franchise. And that's not a criticism. That's just makeup. That's just who he is as a person, So that's the thing that's one of the things that's interesting about Miller. But talent-wise, no, he can do it all, everything.
Yeah. David Aldridge with us here for just a few more minutes on the Team 980. All right, I love asking this question about draft time. I did it a bunch for folks who cover the NFL draft.
Yeah.
If you are the Commanders at whatever pick they had, I've scrubbed it for my brain. They were 16.
I think, yeah.
It was like, who's the guy you wanted on the board?
Yeah.
Same question tonight for the Wizards
For the
today.
Wizards?
Who do you want to see on the board if you are Dawkins?
Two people. Well, it's more than two people, but the two at the top are Anthony Black. I think Anthony Black is too good at everything else to make his shooting problems prohibitive for you taking him.
Yeah.
Like, this is the NBA. People get better shooting.
Right.
They put the time in, they get better. Now, does he become prolific? No, but he'll become credible enough that if you go under, he'll make the shot more often than not.
Right.
That's
And we've
all
seen that, De'Aaron Fox is,
Sure.
I think,
Guys
probably the
get better.
best, most recent example.
Most guys who are willing to put the work in, they get better shooting. So if this kid works hard, by all accounts, he's a hardworking kid. He is a really disruptive force defensively. Switchability, long, smart. He's a very good passer. Now, do you want him to be your point guard from night one? You may not. You may want him to be your secondary ball handler to start. But eventually, he's going to get really good at it, I think, at the NBA level. Because they run a lot of stuff. Eric Musselman runs a lot of pro stuff.
Right.
Right. He's DHOs and things like that. He knows how to run that stuff. So I'd like to see him. And again, Taylor is the other kid from Central Florida who, what intrigues you is he shot 39% on threes and he led the conference in block shots. That is a very interesting combination.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I am intrigued.
That's a very interesting, at 6'9", at 6'9.5". That's a really interesting combination of skills that this guy has. So a guy like that, a wing that, a Rashard Lewis-y type of wing, they haven't had here in a while. It's been a long time.
They've tried so
like
hard,
even
David.
KCP was a really good 3-and-D guy, but he didn't have the size. He was
Right.
6'5", 6'6".
It's what they wanted Rui to be. It's what they want Denny to be.
Yeah,
but
this
like,
guy's 6'9" and splashes it,
Yeah.
and blocks shots and defends. So those are the two guys to me. Now that obviously if somebody incredible slips down there.
Sure.
But if I like Jarace Walker, but there's some things in terms of offense I'm not sure that are going to happen. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So that would be he's there. Cam Whitmore, beast athletically, beast. You just want to see more kind of diversity in his offensive game for me to feel like this guy. You can just put this guy in a high, weak side pick and roll. He's going to destroy it. I'm not sure. So those two guys I mentioned are the guys that I think the Wizards would get the most out of at that pick.
A couple quick hitters on the way out.
Yep.
One more draft, kind of bringing everything together, and then a couple of other guys on the roster. I'm curious what you think their value is around the league and if they'll get moved. As far as bringing it all together, does the Poole trade affect tonight at all? Or because you are doing this chess thing where you don't actually know where the next moves are, you just –
I think –
if you take another guard and you've got a bunch of small guards, it doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters. I mean, I think you want to take – you're going to take talent. You have to start amassing talent, and you'll figure out where it all fits later. And again, Anthony Black at 6'6", 6'7" is different than all the other guards they have.
Right.
You know, other than DeLon Wright, who I suspect strongly will not be here opening night. So, so that gives you a little different kind of dimension, different look, right? So I don't think it does. I don't think Poole affects it one way or another. I doubt they were going to take someone like Jordan Hawkins or Grady Dick, who are the two best shooters in the draft,
right.
you know, at the 2 spot. I never have heard them linked to either of those guys. Now I'll say this. OKC doesn't tell you what they're really going to do. They just do it.
That's
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so everybody putting Anthony Black to the Wizards doesn't mean they're taking it. They're putting Anthony Black with the Wizards. I just want to caution people in that. OKC's history is we do what we do, and you'll find out on draft night. You know, but we're not going to tell people what we do. So I'm not saying they won't take Anthony Black. I'm saying it's not going to shock me if they take somebody else and they're going to say, here's why we love this guy.
Yeah. So you mentioned DeLon Wright. He's one of the guys. I'll start there.
Yeah.
DeLon Wright, what do you think his value? Because I've said this 100 times. I'll say it 101. If I was a playoff team,
absolutely,
I would be beating down the Wizards' door
Sure.
for DeLon Wright.
See, that's what I thought the Lakers were going to do at the end of the day. You know, with the Chris Paul, I thought that they would try to expand the trade and maybe it becomes a 3-team trade where they get Chris Paul and DeLon Wright and the Wizards get a bunch of draft picks or whatever. But now that's not there. Well, you know, again, keep in mind, all these trades are tentative trades.
Yeah,
Like,
I do think the
you know,
Beal one got.
The Beal one, but the Chris
Yeah.
Paul one is a 7-1 trade. I mean, that's a July 1st trade, so that can be expanded. You know,
Yeah.
so maybe DeLon Wright winds up in that trade somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
because you could always expand it to include more teams. So, but I certainly think he's going to get moved. He's very valuable. You're exactly right for a playoff team, for a championship contending team. He could have the exact same impact that KCP had in Denver to me on another team that really is trying. Like, I mean, Phoenix has absolutely nothing left to trade, but he would really help them.
Yeah,
if
I
could
thought
get
he was
him.
going to be involved in that
You know
one,
what
too.
I mean? But teams like that really are all in, he could help.
I got a hard out in 25 seconds,
Yep.
so I'm just going to Monte Morris is gone, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe with DeLon, right?
That's the funny thing is some of these guys could wind up packaged together.
Yeah.
David, always great to see you in person. Always appreciate your time here on the show. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The Hall of Famer David Aldridge with us. Chris Nockey, Linnell Willingham hop on next. We get going on our draft show on the Team 980. All right, Craig Hoffman. Craig Hoffman commanding one more segment here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Always streaming live as well, both feeds on the Odyssey app. Our last little bit on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980. My show in the afternoons on the Team 980 streams there live every day if you ever want to watch. All right, I asked David Aldridge this question earlier. I will ask both of you, and then I will get out of your way, and you can host from 7 till whenever the draft is over. The player you want to see on the board tonight when the Wizards get on the board at 8 is, like, you can't say Victor Wembanyama. We got it.
It's not going to happen?
Really? Yeah. I'll even give you one of the Thompson twins. Like, I'll stretch this thing out. Cam Whitmore. Like, all these guys, cool. Who's the player that realistically could be there that you want to see on the board at 8?
You want to go?
Yeah, I like Cam Whitmore, man. The kid out of Villanova. He's got some local flair as well. I just think in today's NBA, what you value right now is these position versatile wings that can guard multiple positions and stretch the floor. And so I think Cam Whitmore represents that. And he's somebody, based on his body, that should be able to come in right away and contribute.
You know, I'm going to go Cam also, but for a little bit different reason. You used a phrase that everybody uses, Craig, the last segment about the culture. Mm-hmm. Culture needs to change. And one of the things you get with Whitmore, at least from what I've seen, is you get a certain ferocity. He's a man. You know, he's a man. He plays hard as hell. He's ferocious around the basket. I think you need to alter the way this franchise is perceived. I think he's a guy who maybe can do that for you. But here's the other thing. If I don't get exactly the guy I want at 8, I'm moving back. I'm trading. I'm picking up assets. If he's not available or the guy ID is not available at 8, I'll move back to 14 because I don't think the guy that you pick at 8 is much different from the guy you get at 14. You may be able to get back into the first round again later on.
So, okay, that's an interesting question. What are your tiers? Wemby 1, Scoot and Miller 2?
Yeah.
And then there's a drop-off after that?
I think there's a top 6. I think the Thompson twins and Cam thrown in with those top 3 are the top 6. If one of those top 6 is able to drop to 8, I'm going to grab him. But the other, if you're not going to get one of those guys, you're picking maybe a point guard from Arkansas that played 1 year, or a point guard from Kentucky who's a fierce defensive-minded player but can't really make open shots. So why wouldn't you move back down to 14 and maybe get a Jalen Hood-Schifino from Indiana, who's a mature.
Look at this guy, Big Ten guy.
Yep. I mean, I saw him play enough. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I just think you have some options. But again, because of the mode you're in right now and the week that you've had, they may very likely move back because it's now the game has changed a little bit for them right now.
Yeah, it is interesting. So, for instance, a player that was on their radar or like fit kind of the profile because they've worked out nothing but guards basically, right? And now they have Tyus Jones in the trade. They have Jordan Poole. They still haven't gotten rid of Monte and DeLime, but you got to imagine that's coming. And then you also got Johnny Davis, who you took last year, who's like a smaller guard. Even if he's 2, he's smaller. Mm-hmm. It does like. I tend to think you can't worry about roster fit because they're going to continue to make over this roster so frequently over the next couple of years. But you do kind of look at opening night and eventually go, they got to put 5 out there. Not all of them can be 6'3".
Well, to your point, too, put yourself in the coach's shoes. This is kind of a make or break year going into it for Wes Unseld, and so now all of a sudden, boy, things have changed dramatically over the course of the last 4 or 5 days. So. Talk about trying to put together a competitive team that first week, that first night. I mean, there's some serious challenges for this guy and for this organization.
Yeah. Having Jordan Poole helps because you know he can take your shots.
Exactly.
I think Tyus Jones is a starting caliber point guard.
That's also an interesting thing, though, is like I don't want to play those two together.
No.
Like they're both 6 feet tall.
And I just feel like Tyus Jones is probably a guy that won't be here by the deadline, which is why I agree with what you guys said. You can't worry about what position you're drafting at number 8. I think your best player available scenario.
He may be gone by 8:30.
Yeah, honestly.
Seriously, the way
it's possible.
Yeah, very fluid situation
for sure. So this is a seems to be a fairly guard and wing heavy draft. Is there anybody, and we got 50 seconds left in the segment, so quickly, is there any big that could be available at 8 that you think is interesting? Because that also is like a player or a position they don't have a lot of future available on.
Big guy from Central Florida. Hendricks
Taylor
is a nice player, active, live body. That's a guy who I think will be a top 10 or top 12 pick.
Yeah.
You got something, Linnell?
Yeah, you stole my thunder with Taylor Hendricks. The kid Derek Lively from Duke, I think, is somebody who comes in and can rim protect, and I don't think at Duke you saw his full offensive potential be utilized. He's a guy who's constantly rising, though, in this process, so it'll be interesting to see if he's there.
All right, you guys got it from here.
Let's go.
I'm telling you that wasn't a question. You guys got it from here. I'm out. I'll see you guys tomorrow, 4 o'clock on the Team 980. Draft Show continues next on 980 and The Fan.
106.7 The Fan is